In today's episode, I speak with Tyler Lopez from Long Realty in Tucson, Arizona, who shares his journey in real estate, emphasizing the importance of how embracing AI drives your efficiency and productivity. He discusses his experiences with business coaching and the significance of active prospecting. Tyler also provides valuable advice for new agents and highlights the impacts of technology on the real estate industry. Tune in. Are you a real estate agent eager to unlock the power of AI to boost your productivity and scale your business? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Real Estate AI Flash, the weekly podcast that takes AI from a buzzword to a business tool, making it approachable and actionable for agents like you. I'm your host, Rajiv Sajja, and each week I interview agents from across the country who are using AI to transform their careers. Join us on this journey to become an AI skilled agent and take your real estate career to the next level. Now let's get to this episode. Well, welcome to another episode of Real Estate AI Flash. Well, we have a good one for you today. We have Tyler Lopez from Tucson, Arizona, and he is this team leader for Lopez and Lopez Realtors of Long Realty. And I was recently talking to Tyler, and he was talking about all the things he's doing with AI, and I thought he would be an amazing guest, and he may also be the first guest on our pod that has written a book, which I'm sure we'll get into. So, Tyler, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been in real estate for 13 years now, just hit 13 years. One of the big reasons I got into real estate in the first place is I love to just talk to people. You know, there was always a way to navigate life, and it was always like this barter and trade system that I found. And I'll tell you what's crazy is that I didn't find out until much, much later in life that you could just start a business when you wanted to. I always thought you had to have LLCs and you had to have all these business coaches and bankers, and that just wasn't the case. So what had happened is when I was graduating college from U of A, there were so many fires that were going, and I wanted to have my hands in everything. And I was sitting around this table with my great aunt's wake. She had just passed away. And I'm sitting at this table with all these women there, and they're all really going in on me. Tyler, you should do this, and you should do this. And they all had these plans. I wanted to be a stockbroker. So finally we sit there and I go, what is up with all these ladies? They're so just incessant. I need to be in real estate. And I didn't really understand why they were so pushy for it. But they were all the corporate people at Long Realty when we were at our local level. So those are all my aunts and all the people that really influenced me from the very beginning. And I'll tell you, it was the first check I ever got with a comma. You know, everything before was just tips and really just doing whatever I could to get by and meet the right people. And real estate just kind of seemed to be what the calling was. It was the most expensive thing that I could think to sell, but I had no idea what I was getting myself into because I was so young. But thank God I did, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So how long give us a little story in terms of how long you've been in real estate, and you obviously do north of 300 million in transaction volume in your short career. I mean, you're like, what, 30 years old?
Well, I just turned 37.
Oh, well, okay. You look not a day over 30 though.
I appreciate it. Yeah. So when I first started in real estate, there was this big group of people, and we were all very, very active, all around about the same age. So there wasn't a lot going on in real estate in 2011. So some of us really latched on to some coaches and mentors. And at that time I was selling 30 to 40 houses a year, and that's really good. I mean, I thought that was very, very decent. But I saw some of these big guys selling hundreds, 200s, 300s of houses a year. And what I figured out is they needed to figure out their mindset, then they needed to figure out their time, and then they needed to leverage those two things together in order to create a business and then duplicate that. So I got really into business coaching and real estate coaching, and we started selling anywhere from 100 to 200 houses a year ever since 2015 when I met Tana, who is now my wife, and she's the other Lopez and Lopez and Lopez.
Yeah.
We keep going. Our culture is very, very much based on giving, grace, and gratitude, which is our mission statement. And every day we're trying to really not just predict the market, but become the market, so that when folks will call us, they know that we're active enough that we're the ones that are trying to create the market rather than wait for the market and hope our phone rings. So a lot of that has really developed into what my book is called, The Best Way to Do Everything Wrong, because along the way, with stubborn attitudes and people who have those D personalities really want to excel, really get lost in the systematic process of it. So going back to that is I did everything wrong. I still don't know how to do the right way, but I do definitely know how to do it the wrong way.
Yeah, and I have a copy of your book and I read it, and it talks about how you can turn mistakes into masterpieces, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And you can't succeed at your level without making some mistakes and learning from them. And there's an attitude that behind it. So we'll put a link to the book in the show notes for all of you that you should definitely get Tyler's book. I think it's a great journey of how you can embrace mindset and action and not being afraid to make mistakes, right? But there's
Absolutely.
a certain mindset to it. So obviously you're doing a lot of stuff with AI, but what was your first light bulb moment with AI? I mean, everybody's got their own thing, but what was
Yeah.
yours, Tyler?
What mine was really was when crypto started getting really, really big. I'm,
Mm,
I'm super massively into computers. I know it's where a lot of our life stays. I mean, it's where we focus. It's where we spend a lot of our time. And I saw a lot of very young people really getting a lot more advanced a lot quicker than I was, because I was confusing what made me smart with what made me intelligent. And a lot of these kids that were growing up, none of them were intelligent at all. They were just smart enough to go, here you go. So instead of me getting mad about that, as I was growing my team, I realized the people that I needed to attract were all the people that I was getting frustrated at. You know, as we're growing up, we see the different generations getting more and more disingenuous with each other because one has it harder, one has it easier. But what it really takes is, why make life so much harder when you can make it perfect? I don't think I had this light bulb moment when I figured the biggest problem that I solve with any bit of AI is the understanding of it alone. So when I saw these kids being grown up in it, they don't really understand how it works, but they know how it works. They can't figure out how to reverse engineer it. And that's where my skill came in, because I went, you know what? If these kids can just, or like, I call them kids, but these are very successful people
yeah.
that we always considered they were shortcuts, until I could finally figure out that it's not a shortcut. It's a streamlined process to make sure that we don't make mistakes. Instead of testing and then failing, it's this streamlined thing where I go, I need to figure out how to make sure that all the things I believe are unique to me can be streamlined and processed in that same way to duplicate myself. And turns out that's not really incredibly difficult. You just have to know what your real goal is when you're doing that, to duplicate
Yeah.
yourself. Process.
I've always believed that, AI or any transformative tech favors the curious. Doesn't mean you're going to always get the answers you're looking for, but if you're not curious, you're not going to dig in, right? And to see how it can add. And running a successful team that you do now, you're always looking for efficient systems that take stuff off your plate so you can actually do the income producing activity,
Yeah.
meeting clients, etc. So what are some specific AI use cases that you've sort of tried and true stuff that you've now incorporated into your team? Let's start talking about each of them.
Yeah, sure. I don't want to give away all my secrets, but what I
Yeah.
will say is the ability to have an ultra memorable system to be able to learn from you and compound on that, I think is a huge advantage.
Yeah.
It's not like we can see it as an assistant, but what we can see it as is, in this process, in what we do, we use this program to do this. An extension of our business, the same way that an email signature would work, or the same way that an order of photos would work, the way that we walk through houses. Using those systems and implementing those take out all of the guesswork of how is it going to be done when it's complete, rather than we can all decide we know exactly how it needs to look, that we can all agree on, regardless of what anybody else thinks of. We're looking for more alliteration in what we do. And in order to do that, we all have to be on the same level of understanding of these systems. And what we find is there's very little understanding of really any of them. So I know this is a long-winded answer, but things like cloning my voice, I would say, is probably the most important thing that I've ever done. Um, I think that when you have a different attitude when you wake up, or you have a heightened attitude, or you're on the phone, whatever it is, if you're doing videos and you need to get a message through to a client, the best possible thing that you can do is make sure that it is perfect for them. To not use things at your advantage like that, I can't imagine that that's not something that is going to be used every single day, all the time. The rest of the creative process, I think a lot of folks are gonna be really long to wait for that, because it's really intimidating. But stuff like Sora, and I think you said you use Midjourney a lot, or something of that nature. The frustrating part about it is, I think it's too early for people to adopt it. But the way that we use all these systems, and I can name all of them. I mean, they're between ChatGPT, 11 Labs, HeyGen, Opus Clip, Perplexity, Synthesia is a good one. There's so many to get bogged down with, but figuring out how to streamline the things that are going to take your actual intelligence and thought process and say, I'm not going to be in a good enough mood, or I can't think well enough in order to do this. Those are all the systems that we're using. Let's just take care of the guesswork and just get to work and focus on the things that people are going to care about. And that's the high fives and hugs, the handshakes.
Yeah, 100%. I've always said, Tyler, that if you focus on AI automating the ordinary, so you can actually have the time to personalize the extraordinary, which is your client relationships, right? So to unpack a little bit of what you said, before you even jump into a tool, I think you should look at your current processes, right? So if you say, I do these things with buyers, I do these things with prospecting, here's my workflow, AI will fit into all of those things. If you then dig in, okay, I need to learn how to create video or audio. And you mentioned 11 Labs, there are unicorns in AI that do some things exceptionally well. Like if you're big into images, I realized that DALL-E sucks with images from ChatGPT because it looks AI. Versus if you learn Midjourney, you can create realistic images. Even the new Grok app that's free from X is amazing for people to get started with images that are very realistic, close to realistic. So to your point, I think all of us are going to build our own AI tech stack that fits into our processes. And I think ChatGPT sits there for almost all of my tech stacks, but it's not the only one, clearly, And to the other point you mentioned, I mean, most of people treat AI as an assistant, and that's a great place to start. But in my mind, if you treat it only as an assistant, I think you're shortchanging it because it can also be a thought partner.
Yeah.
Like what I did, and here's a good one for the listening audience, and custom GPTs. I built a bunch of custom GPTs in ChatGPT. One of them is I put all the things I want to do in 2025, completely trained it for my business plan, the whole thing. And now every quarter, monthly, I check in. It's almost my coach for my business plan.
That's great.
Right? So again, your imagination is the only limitation you have with AI, right?
I absolutely agree. Yeah.
Right?
And there's so many things to explore, and there's so many things that may do all of one thing at once. But I think that's the best way to get paralysis by analysis is for all the things this program can do, rather than taking a program. And like you said, maybe some of the fear that I've heard a lot is that you can't create a personality around it. It's a computer and you type in the prompt and it comes up, but you really can. You 100%. Find out how to talk to the systems the way that it understands you. Not every program is going to understand every person the same way that it does. You have the opportunity to build your own algorithm, right? Yeah. The same way that you do on Facebook or Instagram. And these things, you teach yourself how to get the right answers that you need from each individual program, regardless of what it is, right? You end up knowing your system, and this is how I prompt these systems, and that's how you build a personality around it.
Yeah, 100%. And we've taught this is obviously in the second year of the podcast, and I've published a playbook for AI for agents to learn and kind of get started. It's a digital playbook that talks about a foundational way of learning effective prompting. And we talk about 4 Ps and REAIF, which is prime, prompt, polish, publish. And in the priming, we talk about role, input, steps, and expectation, just as a framework that helps you learn prompting effectively. And to your point, I mean, once you learn, and I've heard this quote, which also resonated with me, with AI, you can't think big enough. On the contrary, you can also not think small enough, which means don't be worried about how far it's gone. Kind of start somewhere small and get your light bulb moments. Yeah. And what I'm finding with you, Tyler, is the only difference between you and many of our listeners are you've had many light bulb moments, right, sure, compared to the others. And I think we're all on our own journeys, right, of discovery. So you mentioned briefly about your book, but talk to me about the genesis of the book. I mean, how did that come around,
So in business coaching, one of the most important things I've learned just through reading and interacting with a lot of people is the most successful people I've ever met had a certain line of code. It's a generalization of, if you want to get along with me, here's the things that I believe. So in order to do that, I started thinking a lot. I've taken notes and I've taken numerous classes, these kinds of things, probably hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, and I've written it all down. I always knew that writing things down heightened all your senses. You can see it, you can read it, you hear it to yourself, you say it. So what I did is I took every single one of those notebooks and typed every single one of them up and took all those key enlightenment moments that I had and took them into 20 different principles. And it's always been this way with my team. I've always had these principles of saying, before you come and work for me, you got to understand these things. For example, never make permanent decisions on temporary emotions.
Yeah, that's a great one.
We start to learn these things and learn how to work with me. And the premises of the book was, here's all the mistakes that I know you're going to try to fix for me. You know, if I want to be your business partner, you're going to assume I have all these problems. I don't have problems. We as partners are going to have solutions. And so here's a book that I can put in front of you to know that if you're willing to put in the time into our relationship, I can make your life very, very good. Very, very good. But between these 100 pages, you're going to start to hear a lot of things that I believe and become very true in my personality. But the real premise at the end of all of it is so that the people around us know that you're not the only crazy one out there. You know, you're not the only one that feels these certain things. When you feel a certain amount of success in business, this is going to happen to you, and you can either choose to break down or break through. And so when another chapter is, I could talk about the book for days and days and days. But never make permanent decisions on temporary emotions is a great premise of the book, because a lot of it is to take a breath, realize what you've accomplished, realize how you've gotten to this point, and recollect your thoughts and be really grateful about getting this far rather than beating yourself down of everybody else not recognizing that you got this far. Does that make sense?
And I think you hit on a point where it bears repeating. I mean, never make permanent decisions on temporary emotions. That point, I mean, if you do this business long enough, you're going to make some mistakes. It's how you react to those mistakes. Are they learning opportunities that help you raise your game to the next level?
Yep.
Or to the temporary emotion side, where you make bad decisions because of the mistakes you made. So I think it's a great book. I mean, so here's a fun question for you. If you had to grow your team and you're hiring new agents for Lopez and Lopez, do they have to read the book and take a quiz with you?
They really do. Yeah. I mean, one of the guys that I'm planning on hiring pretty soon, I mean, he's been there the whole time, you know, and he's damn near got it memorized, which is great. You know,
nice. Yeah, it's principles. I mean, it's you know, your vibe attracts your tribe, right?
Yeah.
So, so cool. Before I get to my final two questions, Tyler, is there anything else you feel that you can kind of touch at a high level in terms of AI and how? I mean, I believe we're still in the top of the first inning.
Yeah.
With all this stuff. Anything else?
I'm really hesitant always to give advice, and this is one of the conversations that we've had, because the things are moving so fast that most people are holding back from learning any of it and you know what? They're right, Rajiv. They're right. You know, if you wait another month, you won't have to learn any of this. You won't have to know any of that. But the biggest advantage is at least having an understanding of it and learning the programs a little bit to know how the back end is communicating with the world for you, rather than just taking advantage of it and knowing, hey, I don't have to worry about that anymore. That just happens. Like in the last month, I've learned how to code. Not only in HTML, but also in Python. And it's not that the AIs are doing it for me, because you still have to look through the code. You still have to really kind of understand a completely foreign language. So the high level stuff that I'm always thinking of is, how do I make these programs communicate with each other? But to add some value to the podcast, Rajiv, the number one thing that I think every person in the entire world could be using AI for is to target their market. It's crazy how easy the internet and AI has made your ideal client to be found.
Yeah.
And just with really just a very few simple prompts, you can have an entire game plan on how to reach these people, how much it's going to cost, how soon, and exactly step to step what to do. Now, I see most people get all those steps and don't do them because it is intimidating, and there's no point in starting it now, because by the time you finish it, it'll be automated. But what I've seen over the past 2 years is nobody's doing any of it. Nobody's paying any mind to it. And every time I show anybody something that I've done, the more that they have an idea that AI might have something to do with it, the less they're interested in. And that's fine by me. And that's fine by me. I believe it's my biggest advantage is sitting
Yeah.
down with clients and saying, I know exactly how to reach the ideal client for your house. I can prove it. I can show it to you. I'm not saying you won't care, but once I start talking about it, you definitely won't be concerned on whether or not you're working with the right person or not. My number one strategy is to make sure your house sells or nothing happens. So being able to prove these systems and knowing how these programs work, like I still hear people say chat GBT and in the same sentence give somebody advice about it.
Yeah.
So the more we can focus on the understanding of them and how to explain to people who really don't have an understanding of it, the more advantage you have in our market.
100%. And that's really when I started this podcast a little over a year ago now, it was about making AI approachable and actionable for real estate professionals. Although it's this big thing and it's moving, and I feel like the last 2 years, it's been like 10 years in normal technology, the speed of evolution, right? Nobody's ever seen that. But you should never have FOMO that you're missing out on AI because nobody's keeping up there's a few hundred people in Silicon Valley that are keeping up. But I tell agents now that you should feel FOMO if you've never begun your journey with AI.
You're in trouble.
But at some point, you're going to be in trouble. There's be separation season. So very well outlined, Tyler. So my final two questions I ask all my guests. If you had to start your real estate career again or your younger self, what would be the one piece of advice you'd give agents listening that they should embrace?
The difference between active and passive prospecting. Most agents spend the first 2 years of their career passive prospecting. I'm going to do open houses. That's hoping somebody walks through the door. I'm hoping that if I put an ad on the internet, somebody will call. The idea of active prospecting is asking people face to face for business. And moreover, if I would have gotten better, not better advice, but I would have heard it better, is that to be a fly on the wall is one thing, but to be a helpful person at the table and communicative without being disrespectful is just being prepared for that meeting. It's, people will show up to certain meetings and go, what do you have for me? And when they're competing against me, the client will look at me and go, what do you have for me? And I have everything for them. Yeah. So I didn't know that I had to have those things prepared. You don't have to know just about anything about real estate, but you do have to be as prepared as humanly possible. That's what clients are hoping for. So instead of doing, geo farming, instead of doing open houses, instead of putting your phone number on Facebook and hoping somebody calls, that's going to work eventually. But all of that is passive. You're crossing your fingers, hoping something happens rather than asking for the yes or asking for the no. And as soon as I started doing that, my idea was to find 10 people who can give me 10 deals a year. And that's when my life changed. So I instead of going a mile wide, I went a mile deep.
Yeah.
And so take care of people better and find the people that matter the most to you, because when days are really, really hard, it's incredibly hard to deal with more than 10 people. I'll tell you that. It really is.
That's great advice. Great advice. So the last question is about a book or a podcast besides your book, which we've obviously covered. What is the one book or podcast that has probably made the most impact in shaping you today?
Bigger Pockets. I don't think they get enough credit. When I started flipping houses very, very young, I thought I was a genius. I remember arguing with different lenders, and they weren't figuring out what I was trying to talk about. So what I wanted to do was buy a house with cash, fix it up, and then go do a cash out refinance. So what happened was all the banks at that time, since all the REOs and everything that was happening in the market, they hated that that was even a thing, that anybody could buy a house with that much equity. It just wasn't a thing. So going to a lender and saying, hey, I want to cash out this much and I have a loan at $100,000. Every lender had a problem with it, but there was no issue. It's the Burr method. And I thought it was a genius when I was doing it. So buy, renovate, rent, repeat, or refinance, repeat. And I did that a bunch of times until I started listening to Bigger Podcasts. They've been doing it for a year prior to me. And so that moment, everybody that I've ever known in real estate, between Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Bigger Pockets, that will teach you everything you need to know about real estate and investing. It really is. I mean, it's first and foremost. I mean, I think it's a prerequisite to real estate to listen to first 50 episodes of Bigger Pockets and read Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah, for sure. Well said. Well, Tyler, this has been fun.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping I can see you in Tucson when I'm there for your Agents of Change event later on, I think in April. April 10th is the date. But I appreciate the time and continued success, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it, Eugene. Thank you.
You made it to the end. Nice. My goal with this podcast is to elevate your AI skills every week. If you found value in the show, your goal is to follow, share with a fellow agent, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and leave us a review, as it helps us reach more agents like you.